Huh, I haven't covered Call for an Uprising in a while. I wonder how he's doing.
This video that came out a while ago. It got leaked from the Pentagon. The media kind of ignored it back then, but there have been attempts to debunk it, but even places that have tried to debunk it can't debunk it because it looks so legitimate.
So the video looks so legitimate, and so it can't be debunked? That's usually not proper methodology. We can make anything look legitimate in the digital age. So, let's roll that intro and jump right in. What's up, guys? Welcome to the show, and today we're going to be talking about Call for an Uprising. Obviously, it was in the intro. Note, this is totally not a bid to farm comments from his fans for a future video release. But speaking of future releases, the best way to find out about those is to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so that you can be notified when new stuff comes out. If I don't chill that, the YouTube gods will smite me, I'm sure. That all said, you know how this goes. We're going to get into fan art, and then we're going to get into the video itself. So first of all, we have my cats trying to hit the subscribe button. That is from Little Rabbit. We have apparently a Suris as a Rapunzel sitting in a hammer tower by Jack and Quill. And then finally, we have another one of the many furry Surises. This one is from Polar Fox Sparkles. As always, thank you for your fan art submissions, and let's get right into the video proper.
And, well, it's about a vax that would pretty much eliminate what they call the Godhead. The whole point of the vax is to eliminate Christian fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism, right? They talk a lot about other people, after 9/11, 9/11, they talk about, these religious fanatics, they're dangerous, we need to eliminate this. And they talk about creating a vax in which it would stimulate certain parts of the brain that would make people more compliant, which sound familiar, as far as fluoride and things like that go.
It sounds familiar as far as fluoride conspiracy theories go, but as far as fluoride and what it actually does to the system, well, that's a bit different. You see, water fluoridation started, at least in the States, in the 1940s. During the 50s and 60s, conspiracy theorists claimed that fluoridation of the water was actually a communist plot to undermine American public health. At the end of the day, though, the actual controversy with fluoride in the water, the real one, not the one where people think that it's some kind of mind control, comes from weighing the benefits of the dental care provided by having fluoride in the water versus the infringement on individual rights about what water you drink. Not everybody can afford the more expensive bottled water and have to drink from the tap. This means that the real battle about fluoride in the water is completely and totally abstract. It's a battle about the rights of individuals to choose what water they drink. You can jump down the conspiracy rabbit hole and find thousands of claims about it, ranging from it's mind control to it dumbs down your brain, ironically spoken from people who can probably have a pebble skipped across theirs. The thing with fluoridated water is that it actually exists naturally. So the reality is you're trying to control the amount of fluoride in the water. Water that has a fluoride count that exceeds the maximum value of 1.5 milligrams per liter has been shown to have negative side effects such as dental fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and even weakened bones. Note that water with higher levels of fluoride that is actually considered dangerous still occurs naturally. So realistically, the conversation isn't about whether or not fluoride should be in there. It usually is. The conversation is about how much should be in there and how much is considered safe. In 1984, we came up with the estimate for 1.5 milligrams per liter as a generally safe level, and that was reaffirmed by another study in 2006. I will be linking those down below. I didn't want to spend an entire episode talking about fluoridated water, but I figured that since I hadn't done it on my channel previously, it would probably be a good idea to do a quick primer before continuing on with this.
What this would eliminate the Godhead and eliminate all people's beliefs and critical thinking skills as well.
A vaccine to eliminate critical thinking skills. I'm not 100% certain you actually understand what a vaccine is.
This clip I'm going to show you is directly from the pits of hell, as one of my subscribers would say, straight from the pits of hell.
I'm going to go ahead and give everybody a fair warning. The clip he's talking about is very long. It's about 3.5 minutes. For the sake of context, I will be playing the entire clip, so please bear with and let's continue.
Take a look for yourself.
Excuse me, on the left over here, we have individuals who are religious fundamentalists, religious fanatics, and this is the expression, RT-PCR, real-time PCR expression of the VMAT2 gene. Over here, we have individuals. So let me complete. So over here we have individuals who are not particularly fundamentalist, not particularly religious, and you can see there's a much reduced expression of this particular gene, the VMAT2 gene. Another evidence that supports our hypothesis for the development of this approach. What you see
here is by spreading this virus, we're going to eliminate individuals from donning on a bomb vest and going into a market and blowing up the market.
So our hypothesis is that these are fanatical people, that they have overexpression of the VMAT2 gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior. So we have some very, very remarkable data in this next slide. Here we have two brain scans. These are fMRIs. These are two different individuals with different levels of expression of VMAT2. On top is an individual who's a religious fanatic, an individual, and we've repeated this numerous times, that has high levels of VMAT2. Now, this individual down here who had low levels of the VMAT2 gene, this individual would self-describe as not particularly religious. In each case, these individuals were read a religious text. This individual lit up the right middle frontal gyrus, shown here, and that's a part of the brain that's associated with theory of mind. It's a part of the brain that has to do with intents and beliefs and desires. In marked contrast, here's an individual who would not particularly self-describe as religious, and when they're read a religious text, what you see is that this part of the brain called the anterior insula lights up. This is a part of the brain that's associated with disgust or displeasure on hearing something.
So you're suggesting I take a CT scan with me when I'm evaluating people to determine whether I put a bullet in their head?
So the data that I'm presenting here supports the concept that we're proposing, and I think that we would not propose to do CT scans or fMRIs on individuals out in the hinterlands of Afghanistan. The virus would immunize against this VMAT2 gene, and that would have the effect that you see here, which is it's essentially to turn a fanatic into a normal person. And we think that will have major effects in the Middle East.
How would you suggest that this is going to be dispersed? The aerosol?
Well, so the present plan and the tests that we've done so far have used respiratory viruses, such as flu or rhinoviruses, and we believe that that's a satisfactory way to get the exposure of the largest part of the population. Most of us, of course, have been exposed to both of those viruses, and we're quite confident that this will be a very successful approach.
This is fascinating. What's the name of this proposal?
Yeah, so the name of this project is FunVax, which is the vaccine for religious fundamentalism.
And you have a proposal already?
The proposal has just been submitted, and I think that the data that I have shown you today would support the development of this project, and we think it has great promise.
Okay, I know that was incredibly long, but let's go ahead and get into some of the problems that were brought up here. Before we get into a call for an Uprising's response to this, which I'm sure will be as entertaining as it always is, let's take a moment to talk about what a vaccine is. A vaccine is a biological preparation that provides active acquired immunity to a particular infectious disease. They typically contain an agent that resembles the disease itself, or at least the disease-causing microorganism, and the microorganism is made incredibly weak or completely dead and introduced into the body as such. Your body has two responses whenever trying to deal with any type of infection. They have a primary response where they try to actively change the isotope of any antibody. This is what happens when the immune system has its first exposure to any antigen. Think of it like if you didn't know what a flower is and somebody handed you a flower and explained to you that this was a flower. You now categorically have the information going forward for what a flower is. This is the body categorizing something that it deems as a problem in order to create antibodies antibodies against it. These antibodies usually appear after a multiple-day latent period. Now, here comes the problem. Sometimes, by the time the body has caught up to the actual problem of the infection, it cannot create antibodies in the amount or at the required speed to adequately protect the body. This is because the body takes time to understand any infection-causing agent. Then, your secondary response can happen. A secondary response to the exact same antigen will trigger what's called memory cells. Once these memory cells are activated, it's like accessing something on your hard drive. You don't have to figure out what a flower is anymore, you know what a flower is from the last time. Moreover, you also know whether or not this flower is a threat. Now your body can respond appropriately by creating antibodies much, much faster. Now, do you see any problem with the explanation I gave and what was shown in that video? The video did not talk about a disease so much as it talked about a predisposition in the brain. This means that before we even get to a call for an Uprising's response, we have to understand that the problem they're trying to solve with a vaccine cannot be solved with a vaccine. The previous video on its own has committed a giant category error, so even if research into a vaccine that would effectively remove religious fundamentalism from everybody's mindset, no headway would be able to be made. This is because vaccines simply don't work like that. So, let's go ahead and walk forward with that thoroughly poisoned well.
Now, the guy up there who is introducing this and thinks it's funny and calls it the fun vax, I don't know if he's going to find it fun when burning lava is shoved up his rear end when he enters the pits of hell.
And as per usual, the primary response for a religious fundamentalist is to tell you exactly in which flavors you will burn. Because at the end of the day, that's all hell is. A threat. A meaningless threat from people who actually have no power over you, but desperately want it, so they have to create an enemy, and in order to give themselves the power they need to convince you that that enemy even exists in the first place, they have to create a super scary place that you will go to if you don't accept that this thing is the enemy. Alrighty, let's continue.
But this is the type of stuff that they do, right? Why would they even talk about or bring up an idea like this? This isn't the first time either, okay? This isn't something new. This is going back to Stalin, Hitler. They put fluoride in the water for a reason.
A reason that can actually be traced back historically, and has absolutely zilch to do with controlling a population. But I already went over a bit of that early on in the video. I'm not going to talk about fluoride any longer than I have to.
People are like, oh, these crazy fluoride nuts. They saw that the rebellion and uprising of people who are fighting against tyranny and all these other things died down because of that.
They didn't die down because of fluoride in the fricking water. Also, I love the image that you actually showed, and I mentioned earlier that fluorosis was a problem that could occur with hyperfluoridated water, but that's the thing. Your water has to be fluoridated above the recommended levels. Part of water fluoridation is managing those levels. And again, just because you take your water from a natural source does not suddenly mean that it is not fluoridated. You can have fluoridated water from a natural source. That said, lower IQ is not actually linked to anything in water fluoridation. On top of that, you are committing the post hoc ergo Proctor Hoc fallacy. Oh, the riots died down after they fluoridated the water, so it must have been the fluoride in the water that caused them to die down, even though that's not how anything actually works. You can easily link things like an increased amount of ice cream sales with an increased amount of deaths in a population. Does that mean that when we sell more ice cream, our Vanilla Bean and Rocky Road capitalist overlords are slaughtering our population? No, that's not what it means at all. But unfortunately, the post hoc fallacy is the thing that conspiracy theorists do all the time. They see a series of events and say that, oh, that series of events happened in a very conspicuous order, therefore it must have been a conspiracy, but that's not how this works. In some cases, conspiracies end up being true, but more often than not, they end up being bogus.
And that's part of why they chemtrail us, and that's why they part the aerosol and the other crap that they send into our skin, into the air.
So are you going to just get every single bit of nutcasery you can all at once into a single video? Or are we going to talk about what was supposedly released from the Pentagon? Because, I want to talk about that. That one's actually interesting. Everything else you said has been debunked 1,000 times. So is this one, but this is the one that I actually clicked your video for.
And put in our food and other things. This is strictly a vax that would do the same exact type of thing.
Well, then at least it's going to be as effective as every other thing you've noted. The chemtrails haven't made people more stupid. Turns out they don't really exist. And the fluoridated water didn't do the things you said it did, so if this vaccination, in quotes, is going to be as effective as every other boogeyman you've brought up so far, then I actually don't have a reason to care, because none of those were effective either.
But focus on religious extremists or anyone who has that type of belief that would make them more weaker thinking. And this isn't something that they haven't shown us in predictive programming, because they have. You might remember, well, most people probably don't remember, a film called Serenity. Look at the predictive programming in this film. And of course, the actress who we see featured all the time in American Horror Stories. She's no Satanist or anything like that.
The heck was that last bit? I have no idea what you just said.
She's no Satanist or anything like that.
Oh, she's no Satanist or anything like that. Okay.
And listen for yourself.
Just a few of the images we've recorded. And you can see it isn't what we thought. It's the PAX. The G23 Paxilon hydrochloride that we added to the air process. Supposed to calm the population, weed out aggression. Well, it works. The people here stopped fighting, and then they stopped everything else. They stopped going to work. They stopped breathing, talking, eating.
You see, and that's how predictive programming works, right?
Okay, I guess we have to talk about predictive programming now instead of the actual fucking subject matter you brought up 5 minutes ago. Why are we not talking about that? Why did you just drop that down and not give context, not say anything? Do you just think your audience is stupid enough to just take Of course they are, you have 500 fucking thousand subscribers. Of course they're that stupid. Of course every single one of them is dumb enough to just look at that and just go, oh, that is from the Pentagon, and it is bad, instead of actually doing even an ounce of research. Fine, you know what? Fuck it. No, I can't do any more of your video. I can't. And here's why. I'm not gonna let you gish gallop in your own fucking edited video. I'm going to talk about predictive programming and what that is and how that works, and then, afterwards, I'm going to dial it back to where you were supposed to talk about the thing you brought up that took 3.5 minutes of your video. And then that'll be that. So, predictive programming is a theory that the government or other higher-ups are using fictional movies or books as a mass mind control tool to make the population more accepting of planned future events. The first time we saw this described and proposed was by researcher Alan Watt, who defined predictive programming as predictive programming is a subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by the media to acquaint the public with planned societal changes to be implemented by our leaders. If and when these changes are put through, the public will already be familiarized with them and will accept them as natural progressions, thus lessening the possible public resistance and commotion. While Alan Watt may have been the person who started this idea, at least as far as I can tell and as far as the sources I'm going to be linking below can tell, conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones and David Icke were the people who popularized it. Most of the people who believe in this are conspiracy theorists who believe that there will be a totalitarian government takeover of some variety flavor. They can never really agree on what it is, and that's usually pretty telling of the issue. A couple of the issues with predictive programming is that it actually flies in the face of other learning theories we already understand very well, such as social learning theory. Under social learning theory, it was hypothesized that children would either hit or ignore a clown doll, depending on what behavior they saw being exhibited by an adult. And it turns out that depending on the behavior that adults showed towards children, those children changed their actions towards the clown doll. They learned their behaviors socially. Predictive programming states, conversely, that regardless of the context and upbringing, the media has a complete and total control over that. In the same experiment with the same type of clown doll, children didn't have a reaction to the doll other than the one exhibited by the adult. There was no other pressure applied from the media that had any effect on them. Now, this isn't to say that the media does not have an influence on what you do or say. Propaganda is a real thing, but predictive programming seems to be bunk. We can use propaganda to familiarize people with things that are already within their Overton window or introduce them to new ideas. Predictive programming, though, argues that this fundamentally changes the neural network in your brain to agree with these ideas or become more susceptible to them, almost like the media weakens you. But that's not how things like propaganda work. They don't weaken you, they have to be compelling on their own. Again, this isn't to say propaganda doesn't work. Propaganda works, and it works because people understand the type of emotional tugs that will cause you to think about something differently. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about the video he brought up, which is the thing I actually want to freaking talk about, because it seems like every other type of conspiracy theory that can be thought of is what Call is going to be gish-galloping through in this video. I don't care about that. Care about the thing that I actually clicked the video for. That said, let's get into the origins of this video. On the 20th of January 2015, Natural News published an article titled 600 Strains of an Aerosolized Thought Control Vaccine Already Tested on Humans Deployed via Air, Food, and Water. So let's start out with the origin of that source, Natural News. If we run Natural News through our good old buddy, the Media Bias Fact Check, we can see that they are just short of tinfoil hat conspiracy theory level, but all the way into the quackery pseudoscience level. They also have a very low level of factual reporting. This is also the same levels that we see with something like InfoWars. Whenever a news article of any kind is given to you, I highly suggest you run it through Media Bias Fact Check or any other fact check and bias check website you can to figure out if it's a left-wing extremist website, a right-wing extremist website, if they have a very high or very low level of factual reporting. Funnily enough, if you run CNN and Fox News through it, you find out that they are both total horseshit. Alrighty, continuing on. First thing to note, like I said before, with how vaccines work, a God gene is also a popular science myth. Much like how people don't understand how the hell vaccines work, people apparently don't understand how the hell genes work. We don't actually have a God gene. At least not one that has been supported by any type of peer-reviewed evidence. This particular bit of video evidence, while shown on Natural News in 2015, actually happens to be from a lot earlier in April 2011, when the FunVax documentary series was supposed to be put on Kickstarter. This was launched by an individual named Ryan Harper. He's also the registered owner of the domain funvax.com, a site that was made to promote the film. While the Kickstarter for the film was started in 2011, the clip that A Call for an Uprising used was leaked in September 2011, making the chronology of the FunVax conspiracy line up perfectly with what you would see for an indie film release. There is the possibility that a separate source disseminated that information, but there is no evidence that the FunVax conspiracy video that we saw here was disseminated by anyone other than Harper himself. It should also be noted that the video is in incredibly low resolution. As a result, it is very hard to determine if the audio that is attached to the video was tacked on in post, because there's no way to actually look at the lip sync to see if there's any issues. So what seems to be the case is that all of this freaking out about this video clip is literal fear-mongering over an indie project that someone started on Kickstarter, given that the only evidence supporting this rumor is a series of YouTube videos with really questionable veracity, and then a document that describes the project itself, but that document is completely and totally unsourced, so we can't exactly get anywhere with that. Also, the project itself, even if it were real, hinges on two bits of pseudoscience. One, the God gene, and two, how vaccines even work in the first place. Also, fun note, while Call for an Uprising may have used the clips from Serenity in order to argue that this was a part of predictive programming, it should be noted that after having a film that shows that information in it in the first place, it's very easy to go off on the limb and say that somebody wanted to create an indie film project with a subject matter that very, very closely resembled the main plotline of Serenity. Much like how The Walking Dead and other things popularized more zombie media, and how Universal Pictures popularized the monster flick. At the end of the day, this is desperate grasping for straws, and just a quick application of something like Occam's razor, cutting out all the unnecessary bits of information, leaving us with the simplest and most likely answer, which is the indie film project. It would seem to me then that A Call for an Uprising, and by extension his fans, don't want to actually do that, and they desperately want to live live in a fairy tale world where they are constantly persecuted and victimized and desperately need to have a big bad enemy to fight against. To the point where they will grab literal indie film projects with no sourcing in order to say that the big bad in the Pentagon is trying to collapse on them. Note, governments aren't perfect. There are things that have been confirmed that our government has done that have been incredibly unscrupulous. This, though, this is not one of them. This is a bunch of people desperately wanting to LARP their persecution fantasy. And it is on that note that I think I'm going to leave you guys. Thank you very much for watching the video. I am sorry that I cut his video off halfway. If you desperately want to see the rest of it, it will be linked in the description below as per usual. But I wanted to talk about the video he brought up and the issues that existed with it. Not every other conspiracy theory under the sun until this was a 2-hour episode of me just pulling my hair out. So subscribe, Patreon, all the other shit that I put at the end of videos, because at this point, I'm gonna go take a nap. Thank you all for watching. Insert end of video tagline here.